the journeys of the Israelites.
Okay, cool.
Cool. Yeah.
Says,
Let's see. Wow. Okay. Pretty long, but it's probably just mostly a bunch of stats.
maybe.
So let's see. So kick it off. So verse one. These are the journeys of the children of Israel, which went forth out of the land of Egypt with all their groups, their armies, under the hand of Moses and Aaron. And Moses wrote their goings according to their journeys by the commandment of Jehovah, and these are their journeys according to their goings. These are their journeys according to their goings and their okay. And they,
For me, it says starting points. That's a little better.
yeah, it's a little,
I like that better.
yeah. Verse three, and they departed from Ramses in the first month on the 15th day. Okay. So we know this, right? So it was the month of Aviv. It was the first month, at least to the Hebrews, and they left on the 15th day of the first month. So Passover night, where like the angel of death is coming through the camp and killing the firstborn. That was the night of the 14th, right?
Yes.
And
Okay.
then it's saying they're leaving the next day. I feel like there was other places where it may have even implied that they stayed an extra day, but I'm not sure.
Okay.
On the 15th day of the first month, on the morrow, on the next day after the Passover, the children of Israel went out with a high hand in the sight of all the Egyptians.
hmm
Yeah.
Yes, that kind of confirms what you just said. That the night after the Passover would be the night that they left. Um, or the day
Yeah.
after.
Yeah, they definitely left the next day for sure.
hmm
Um, okay, so verse 4, and the Egyptians buried all their firstborn, which Jehovah had smitten among them upon their Elohim, their gods. Also, Jehovah executed judgment.
Yes.
Interesting, yeah. What do you got in 5?
Um, the children of Israel moved from Ramses and camped at Succoth. They departed from Succoth and camped at Etham, which is on the edge of the wilderness. They moved from Etham and turned back to Pi-hahiroth, which is east of Baal Zephon, and they camped near Migdal. They departed from before Herioth and passed through the midst of the sea into the wilderness, went 3 days in the wilderness of Etham, and camped at Marah. They moved from Marah, came to Elam. Elam were 12 springs of water and 70 palm trees, so they camped there. So we've already read this. I mean, we've read the details of this story. This is kind of a review, I suppose.
Yes, yeah. Once
It's nice.
again, another
Yeah,
itinerary.
this is actually a really important chapter for me because I value greatly where they actually went geographically. I mean,
Right.
and I have a hard time remembering it. So, this is the kind of
Yeah.
thing that helps me out for sure.
Yeah, for me, it just kind of makes it a little more real, you know.
Yeah.
And these names, I feel like a lot of these names were kind of like, and then we moved to this place that is called this place because we called it that place, you know.
Just we called it that.
Like the first place they go to, they leave Ramesses, which obviously they didn't name, but then they camp in Sukkot, which is a recognizable word, right? Because that's Sukkot, meaning booths or like little tents or whatever, which is
hmm
a pretty fitting name. Like they leave Egypt and their first campsite they basically name tents, you know.
hmm
Like,
Yeah.
this is
The first thing that comes to mind.
yeah, and this was, I mean, Jacob, generations before had named a place where he camped, and he let his flocks camp near the Jordan. He also named that Sukkot. Definitely two different places, but
Yeah.
interesting. They're kind of carrying on that tradition. And
Yeah.
yeah, and then these other places. Yeah, that's kind of an interesting note about the 70 palm trees.
Yeah, I think I remember when we were reading that
Yeah.
that that seems pretty. That was pretty significant. Um,
Yeah.
Not only the fact that it was 70 palm trees, but that they counted them.
Yeah, it's like,
Like I wouldn't.
mm-hmm. Well, they went down into Egypt. They went with 70, right? And then they leave Egypt. I don't know. I don't know. It's like, why 70?
Yeah. Was it
Uh,
70 when they went in?
yeah, I think it was. I think Stephen, when he's talking about that in Acts, he says 75 for some reason, but I'm pretty
Mm-hmm.
sure it was Joseph who's, or, who, writer of Genesis, Moses, who said it was 70.
Mm-hmm.
But,
Okay.
yeah, anyway, so, and then, let's see, verse 11, they moved, or, yeah, they went to the Yom Suf, which is where they crossed in the first place, right? And encamped in the wilderness of Sheen. Verse
Yeah,
11.
it's just sin for me. I'm in the New
Yeah,
King James.
yeah. Yeah, it's seen. Yeah, that's what it is.
Oh, okay. Seen. Okay.
Yeah, and verse 12, and they took their journey out of the wilderness of Sin and encamped in Dophka, and then they departed Dophka and encamped in Elus, and then Elus to Rephidim, where there was no water for people. So Rephidim, this is where they God splits the rock open. I feel like, um,
Okay.
and they departed from Rephidim and pitched in the wilderness of Sinai. So we know where Sinai is. That's where Mount Sinai is. And
Mm-hmm.
they moved from the desert of Sinai and pitched in Kivrot Hattava. They departed from there and went to Hazarot, and Hazarot pitched in Ramah. A bunch of other places that don't look particularly recognizable.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm in verse 36. Etzi and Gever. That's right outside Canaan. I want to say Kadesh. That's definitely right outside Canaan. Um, Verse 37. They moved from Kadesh, which, by the way, Deuteronomy opens up saying that Mount Sinai and Kadesh Barnea, which is right outside where they actually enter the Promised Land, is only an 11-day journey. Remember that?
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
took them 40 years, but it was an 11-day journey.
Mm-hmm.
And then they're at Edom, which God tells them not to disturb the Edomites. Don't even travel in their land. That their land is their land, and I've given it to them. Remember, Edom is these are descendants of Esau,
Mm-hmm.
so they're considering
Oh yeah.
themselves
Okay.
pretty
Yeah. Mm.
close relatives with the Israelites at this point.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. That's crazy. I wonder. I mean, they must know, right?
yeah, I
You would
mean,
think that they knew that.
yeah, the Israelites certainly knew, and I feel like, yeah, I feel like they all kind of understood. Um,
Mm-hmm.
which, Esau and Jacob definitely later in their own lives settled their differences. Esau definitely had a death wish for Jacob at one point, but then they made
Mm-hmm.
up. So who knows, like how their descendants feel though. His descendants might still feel like they missed out on the birthright and they should be.
Yeah.
But it's kind of like at this point, it's like, well, look what happened to you guys. You guys went and got enslaved in Egypt, and we've been chilling here.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Right. Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, and 38, Aaron the priest went up into Mount Hor at the commandment of Jehovah and died there. In the 40th year after the children of Israel came out of Egypt, in the first day of the 5th month. And Aaron was 123 years old when he died.
Mm.
Yep.
You've seen some things.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I pulled up my map in my physical Bible to try and follow along here. And didn't you mention that you kind of had a gripe with the traditional location of Mount Sinai?
Yeah, pretty big gripe because
Okay.
tradition. Well, what it is Catholicism has been the only source to claim that Mount Sinai is in what is now called the Sinai Peninsula, and there's never
Mm-hmm.
been any evidence of this. Like the Jews never believed this. The Bible never said that. Even Muslims never believed that it was there. As far as I know,
Mm-hmm.
everybody considered it to be in modern day Saudi Arabia. Um, and yeah, I mean that's definitely where Paul mentions it in the New Testament. He casually mentions it, that it's in Arabia. You know, that's
So that would be
where.
across. That would be across the other Gulf, not the. That would be across the eastern Gulf of the peninsula, right?
Yeah,
They went.
yeah, they
They went
definitely
around.
went west to east. I want to say.
Yeah. Well, that's the way they had to have gone,
Yeah.
and at least in the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I think, jogging my memory, that you said that they went um, north of that western Gulf, um, and then they traveled down into what's understood to be the Sinai Peninsula, and then that's where they crossed the Red Sea, was on that eastern Gulf, out
Yeah,
of the Sinai Peninsula.
yeah, like those two little antennas on the top of the main body of water. They went
Yeah.
north. Well, they started. They didn't even have to curl above the Gulf of Suez there on the left. I think they were in Goshen, which is that fertile part, like right on the Nile Delta, which goes up to like where Alexandria, Egypt is now. And I
Mhm.
think they just went north of the Gulf of Suez. I think they cut like kind of diagonally through what's called the Sinai Peninsula to get to what's now called Nueva. If you're looking at a current map, like I'm on Google Maps, and it's crazy how they've kind of maintained most of the same names, but it's
Yeah. Sweet.
Nueva here. So yeah, kind of like halfway through the Gulf of Aqaba, or what was called the Yam Suf, the Sea of Suf, at that
Uh
time.
huh.
And then I think they
Yeah.
just crossed directly over, which supposedly there is a major continental fault line that runs through the Red Sea and then curls up and goes through the Gulf of Aqaba, where the rift comes through, so that there was a land bridge of sorts across that gulf for them to basically just like walk across, whereas the rest of it was very deep and that wouldn't have been possible without that continental fault. So I mean, it was like, I mean, think about like the providence involved. I mean, like God probably, thousands of years ago caused like a massive earthquake which created that fault, so that 4,000 years later the children of Israel could walk across on dry land. um
Yeah. Mhm.
and anyway.
It's a possibility. Oh well, are you talking? You're not talking about when Moses parted the sea. Um, you're talking about an opportunity to cross in a different area at a different time.
Well, like that's where I believe that they crossed when the Red Sea was parted. But honestly, looking into the geology of it a little bit, I feel like it was less of a, like you see in like those old Moses movies where like the water is like making a wall on either side or something crazy like that. I
Yeah.
feel like
Mhm.
I feel like the level of the water generally decreased for whatever reason, and it exposed this elevated strip of land that they would
Oh, I
walk
see.
across, and
Yeah.
supposedly that's due to this continental fault line that creates that elevation, and then there's really deep water on either side of it, so it's like a perfect land bridge for them to cross. And
Mhm.
because I mean, I'm pretty sure Exodus says that the water receded like over the course of all night, and then it came back over the course of like all night. And so it wasn't
Mhm.
like they got, it was like a tidal wave. I think they just like the Egyptians got caught in the tide coming back and
Mhm.
drowned or something. But
Interesting. So it would
yeah.
be traditionally understood that Moses crossed the Gulf of Suez.
No, that they went north of Gulf of Suez, but then crossed what's now called the Gulf of Aqaba,
Oh, okay. All right.
the right
Um,
side.
if if that's where they crossed, I'm just talking about what's understood. If that's where they're crossed, then why is the Sinai Peninsula there in Arabia?
Well, the Sinai Peninsula is just is where it is. My point is that it's misnamed. The Catholic Church at one point said that Mount Sinai was down towards the bottom of that peninsula, which it isn't. It's across the Gulf of Aqaba, where modern day. I mean, this is now where it's like a matter of opinion.
Yeah.
People are calling what's modern day called Jebel Al Lawz, that mountain which is over in Saudi Arabia. There, a lot of people think that that was the real Mount Sinai, and it matches all the descriptions because, um, what was that area of land called where Moses? Because this is where Moses he left Egypt the first time after he killed that Egyptian, and then he fled here, and he stayed here for like 40 years as a shepherd. He married
A Midian?
Zipporah. Midian, that's it. So it's in yeah. Thank you, dude. So this is
Yeah.
still considered up to modern days. It's still considered Midian over here in Saudi Arabia, right on the right side of the Gulf, which is where they would have crossed.
Hmm.
Still called Midian to this day, and that's where this mountain is. Um, that has just a ton of ancient Hebrew artifacts. Like, there's no reason why this mountain should be littered with ancient Hebrew artifacts. Um,
Yeah. Right.
it's just kind of random, some random mountain here. So
Hmm.
I don't know. That's probably what happened.
Okay. Sweet. I still need like a good map. I mean, the stuff in my Bible isn't really, it's not detailed enough for me. Need to come up with a map situation. Very visual. So
Yeah, well, I'm literally just looking at Google Maps here, and it's pretty helpful.
yeah, yeah. I'm looking at Google as well, but I don't see like Midian. I don't see
Oh yeah,
um
yeah.
very much. So, um,
I
but it's all
am.
goody.
Yeah, I just took a screenshot of mine, and I'm like making drawings.
Yeah, that would be. Yeah, that was what I was thinking. Actually, is coming up with like just making one somehow.
Yeah. All right, sent.
So it's my Gmail.
No, I just texted it to you actually.
Oh, cool. That works. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Okay.
pretty
I
pretty
see.
crude, yeah,
Mhm.
but
Yeah. That's funny. Yeah. Yeah. So yes,
yeah. So they were
and that's where he fled. Okay. Yeah. That's a long ways.
yeah, dude. I mean, considering if you think about it, like, um, yeah. I mean, from Sinai to somewhere up here in modern day Israel is 11 days. I mean, maybe it took him like a couple of weeks or something. I don't know.
Hmm.
But yeah, I mean,
So yeah. Yeah. So you're saying that you think Midian is kind of near the base of Sinai, or at least in Sinai's shadow.
yeah, yeah, I think that's because Sinai is definitely in Midian, right? So
Okay.
Paul
Hmm.
said that that's where Moses said he was. He has this whole other life. I mean, he started a family, lived there 40 years as a shepherd in Midian, and was literally the whole time didn't even realize how significant it would be later, I guess. But he was around
Hmm.
Mount Sinai all the time. I mean,
Yeah.
he
Right.
saw the burning bush on Sinai because one of his sheep, went in there and got lost or whatever. So,
Yeah. Hmm.
it's pretty cool.
Cool. I guess my confusion was like if this is kind of like the historically understood path, then why is Sinai in that Sinai Peninsula to the left of Aqaba.
So, like, literally, I don't know the history perfectly, but from what I've heard, like, literally, it was just Emperor Constantine of Rome, which was one of the first emperors to kind of like try to subvert Christianity in the Roman Empire, I guess, because it was getting a little too popular. His
Hmm.
mom, um, literally his mom, like made some kind of trip down to the Sinai Peninsula. They founded some church, named it after her. And then they just decided to say that this was the location of Mount Sinai, and I mean, I guess it kind of just like goes along with everything the Catholic Church does. Like, they literally, I mean, they went down to Israel and named some random place, like, oh yeah, this is where Jesus was buried, with absolutely no proof, and people
Yeah.
still go there and are like, this is where Jesus was buried, and it's like, no, it's 99% probably not, It's like,
Yeah.
but they just
Uh
like
huh.
do the most random shit and just claim it's true. But I don't know. I'm sure
Yeah.
it's a more complicated story than that. But yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Because I mean, I've read like people going to that place to check it out, and it's like anybody could spend like 2 minutes there and realize that like there's no way this was the real Mount Sinai. It just doesn't match any
Mhm.
of the descriptions. There's no ancient
Mhm.
Hebrew artifacts. There's no evidence that anybody was there. You know.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, this other place in Arabia is exactly where it's described. It is has a bunch of ancient Hebrew writing everywhere. Literally has a big altar that they built at one point. Literally has a big ass rock that is inexplicably split down the middle.
Yeah.
And you know,
Yeah.
but yeah, pretty cool.
Sweet. Yeah. It's always about digging into these little avenues, trying to figure out
Yeah,
where the
exactly.
truth lies from the fictional stories.
Yeah, it'd be cool to have a map of like all these different campsites too, and kind of see like what kind of circles they were going in.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Right. Well, that's what I was thinking about. If I could come up with like a template for a map, and then um, basically pencil in different things, but have like a few different map. Obviously, you need the map for a lot of different reasons, for a lot of different stories. But if you had a lot of copies of it, then you could kind of pencil in whatever you wanted as many times as you wanted. So to kind of and then kind of compare and
Mm-hmm.
whatnot,
Mm-hmm.
compare them to each other.
Yeah, definitely,
So
definitely, definitely.
it'd be pretty cool.
Yeah, we should. And I feel like a Bible I used to have like was actually pretty good. And showed all the campsites. But anyways, let's finish this up, I guess.
Yeah, for sure.
I
You
don't
remember where
even.
we are?
No, but I'm gonna skip to 48.
Okay, sweet.
And they departed from the mountains of Avarim. Avarim. That I feel like that means fathers. Um,
Yeah,
maybe not.
before
Uh,
Nebo.
oh, okay. Never mind. It's actually from like the root word where Hebrew comes from, like to cross over or to go beyond. So it's like the place of beyond. And
Okay.
pitched in the plains of Moab. Moab, that's where Ruth was from. Ruth, who would marry Boaz.
Mhm.
Moabites, they were the descendants of Lot. Remember Lot, which was Abraham's nephew. He
Yeah.
he got into that Sodom and Gomorrah issue, was saved by that, but then he goes and lives in solitude and has two daughters, and his two daughters are like, oh no, we're just gonna die without kids, and so they actually get their dad drunk and get pregnant
Yeah.
by him. So
Yeah. Mhm.
so one of the daughters is the matron of the Moabites. And 49, and they pitched by the Jordan from Beit Beit Yashimot even to Avel Shittim in the plains of Moab. And Jehovah spoke to Moses in the plains of Moab by Jordan near Jericho, saying, speak to the children of Israel and say to them, when you have passed over, there's that Hebrew root again, when you have passed over the Jordan into the land of Canaan, you shall drive out all the inhabitants of the land from before you and destroy all of their idols and destroy all of
Mm-hmm.
their images and tear down all of their towers, their high places.
Yeah.
Um, what you got in 53?
You shall dispossess the inhabitants of the land and dwell in it, for I have given you the land to possess. And you shall divide the land by lot as a inheritance among your families. To the larger you shall give a larger inheritance, and to the smaller a smaller inheritance. There everyone's inheritance shall be whatever falls to him by lot. You shall inherit according to the tribes of your fathers. But if you do not drive out the inhabitants of the land from before you, then it shall be that those whom you let remain shall be the irritants in your eye and thorns in your sides, and they shall harass you in the land where you dwell. Moreover, it shall be that I will do to you as I thought to do to them.
Oh shit! Wow.
Damn.
Okay.
These are the Canaanites he's talking about, I suppose.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, they definitely didn't wipe them all out, and I guess the omen of verse 56 is, God was going to drive out and scatter all these Canaanite people, and that ended up happening with Israel, I guess, with the northern and southern tribes, each in their own time, got displaced and exiled
Mm-hmm.
to other places.
Yeah. It definitely wasn't happy ever after by any means when they
No.
actually arrived.
No, no. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
and to me, it's definitely a metaphorical, like, if you get, well, the whole thing. I mean, they leave Egypt. They're supposed to be leaving a life of sin. Then they come to the mountain and they learn God's laws, right? So they
Yeah.
leave the slavery of sin. Then they learn how to be God's people. And then after a whole lifetime of learning how to be God's people, it's time to go live the promise, live in faith. But you're still going to have problems. You're still going to have, temptations to sin. But at that stage in your spiritual walk, if you don't completely rid all of those out, it's almost like you might as well not even. You're still going to lose, and they're just gonna. It's gonna be a stumbling block for you, and
Yeah.
unless
Right.
you kind of clean
Yeah.
house, and I don't know.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. It makes sense.
pretty cool. Pretty cool. Let's see what next chapter is.